So just lowering your gaze to a point in front of you and just coming into stillness already. Stillness in the body, stillness in your gaze. And just recognizing the feeling of sitting. And you might already notice that even with eyes open, just recognizing the feeling of sitting already, there's some kind of resting, some kind of grounding. And then you can close the eyes. And continuing to feel sitting. How exactly do we know we're sitting? Maybe there's some sensations in the body which are recognized as sitting. Feels different from standing. And just allow everything. There's nothing you need to change, maintain. And within this allowing, just allow the body to come into focus. Rest in the body. Rest in the dance of the body. In this stillness, there is still so much movement. The mind is moving. The breath is moving. Sink into the experience of the body. Allow the mind and body to rest in the same place. The body as a sensory experience, moment to moment. The mind as a sensory experience, moment to moment. It's all appearing right here. Okay. And allow yourself to open the eyes, but keep the gaze down as when we started. And notice that you can still clearly feel the body, even with the eyes open. Okay. And letting go of that, and return your attention to me, if you like. So welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining for the second Dhamma talk. I hope the practice so far has been interesting, maybe difficult, maybe easy, maybe some difficult, some easy. But I would just be curious to hear, what have you noticed, or what did you notice about yourself, about your experience, about meditation over the last 5 days? Maybe you can just write, if you feel to share a quick phrase in the chat about something, one thing maybe that you noticed. Some are noticing falling asleep, some are noticing sleeping less. Sensation of floating, observant, detached. Chris is noticing, you notice more detail in people's faces. It's tough, but I'm looking forward to it. I just recognized a new face from Soparam. Hello. Wow, amazing.
Hi, Raymer. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Faith was in the monastery with me last year when I just started off there, in Chiang Mai. Nice to see you. Great. So what else we have? I caught myself. I'm thinking while you were walking during the day. Yeah, great. The thoughts are just an experience of thinking, and they are not necessarily the truth. Comfortable with the experience of the first days, scanning is more difficult, but mostly I notice the running of unchecked patterns. So we are seeing many things. We are seeing how the body and the mind is working, how it's almost happening by itself. The thinking starts going. It's difficult we can't actually control it. We try to focus on the breath, and boom, so many thoughts, so many patterns, so much running, falling asleep, staying awake. All this seems to be happening by itself. We don't really seem to have much control over the thing, but we are learning. we are seeing what's happening. We are seeing how the mind and the body is working, how they are constantly working, how they are causing each other, creating each other. And this process is constantly happening in every conscious moment of our lives. So Elena was mentioning also that while walking, she caught herself thinking. Absolutely. So the thoughts are constantly coming. In meditation, we are deliberately creating more lucidity or more awareness of this process, but they are happening all the time throughout our whole lives, when we're interacting with people, when we're talking, when we're listening, when we get up in the morning, when we go to sleep at night. Every waking every waking moment of our life, there's body and mind and many things that go unnoticed and can create our experience. So I want to introduce Vipassana meditation, which we started this morning. So Vipassana meditation is a kind of meditation technique that comes from the most traditional or oldest form of Buddhism that's around these days. It's Theravada Buddhism, which spread through Southeast Asia. This specific Vipassana technique comes from S.N. Goenka and his teacher Sayagyi Ubakin, who are from Burma, where the Vipassana technique was preserved. And since the Buddha's lifetime, we don't exactly know precisely how the Buddha practiced meditation, because actually it was only started to be written down about 500 years after the Buddha passed away. But before that, it was kind of mouth-to-mouth transition of the techniques, the ideas of the Buddha, or discourses that the Buddha gave, which people passed on mouth to mouth, and then someone started writing it down. And so we have this technique of Vipassana meditation, which various monks have kind of refined and worked with. And there's also different versions of this technique. But the essence of it is mindfulness, is sati. So this is the type of awareness that we are cultivating when we are practicing Vipassana. And mindfulness is a word that's thrown around a lot these days. So I would be careful to call everything that has the word mindfulness Vipassana, because there's a lot of appropriation and maybe people who don't really understand the practice deeply using this word and throwing around. But mindfulness is kind of the direct translation of sati, which means awareness, or to be mindful. So the direct translation of Vipassana is vi and pasana. So it's pasana means to see, and vi as a prefix means to see through, or to see in, or to see clearly, or to see in a special way. So it's kind of a special way of looking, where we are cultivating insight, where the word insight comes from, and where we're cultivating clear seeing, through seeing. And so we are not only relating to experience in a normal way, how we do in our daily life when we, try to work, try to solve problems, thinking about content, thinking about the world, but we are directly trying to cultivate a specific way of looking at experience. So what exactly are we looking at, or how are we looking? We usually, when we are out and about in the world, we are thinking a lot. So maybe you notice some of these thoughts, and what would you say is the proportion of time that you are thinking about the world, or yourself in the world, your position in the world, your future, your past, or the events that you go to, the friend, the family, worries, plans, whatever you think about? Would you, from 0 to 100% in your meditations or in daily life, how much percent would you say? 99.9%. Great. That's probably pretty accurate.
About what else can we be thinking about?
Exactly. So maybe the better question is, what proportion of the time are you thinking?
All right.
Not when I'm reading or making. Yes, very interesting. So when we are kind of focused on something, this thinking tends to quieten down in the way that we are used to. But we're still using a lot of thinking when we are doing things. It just seems to sync up more with the task that we're doing. So instead of thinking about random stuff, we start thinking about just the reading, and the imagination is coming and the images are appearing in the head when we're reading. So we are actually still thinking. Okay. So maybe I'll move on. Usually we are giving all the importance to the world out there, to ourselves, and the mind is thinking about things in this way. When we start practicing Vipassana, we start giving more importance to the body and mind at the moment. More specifically, the sensory experience of body and mind at the present moment. So you might notice that when you were doing the anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing, there were some moments where you feel, you're really just with the feeling of the breath. And then again, thoughts come about the breath, thoughts come about the practice, thoughts come about unrelated things. And then again, maybe there's a few moments of really just your sensory experience of the body. Our mind is actually also appearing as a sensory experience here, which we will cultivate the sensitivity for that. But rather than giving all the importance to the world outside and thinking about the world and our place in the world, we start really seeing what is really here moment to moment, our sensory experience of body and mind at the present moment. So this is this kind of special way of looking, or seeing through, or seeing clearly what is happening, what is the present moment experience of body and mind. And to be clear, the mind is always appearing, the world is always appearing in body and mind, actually. Our imagination about the world, our thoughts about the world, our feelings about the world, our sensation, our emotions about the world, they're all appearing right here in body and mind. So when we're practicing Vipassana, in which you've already started doing, you've started to just pay attention to how the body and mind is working by itself and how it's appearing, and it's kind of almost uncontrollable. And what happens when we start to pay more attention in this way? We start to recognize that body and mind are constantly talking and influencing each other. So you might feel some thoughts coming, you might feel some breathing, some sensations. Maybe there's some pain in the body. Maybe then there's some thoughts about the pain. Maybe then there's more feelings, more discomfort, fidgeting. Maybe then there's more thinking, imagining how you would rather be doing something else. Again, you feel pain. Maybe then you feel the breath. So they're constantly working together, body and mind. So I have a question then. Did you notice, was the breath the same or different throughout your meditations? The pace, the depth, where you felt the breath? Did you feel this was always the same, or did you feel it was changing? And if you felt it was changing, did you see maybe why it was changing? Maybe some emotions or some mental states that appeared, which changed the breath. Did you notice any, let's say, pattern there? And you can just write that in the chat if you notice something. It's noticing when there's more relaxed, deeper breathing. When you're more tense, can barely recognize the breath. The experience of the breath changing. When you feel more relaxed, the breath seems slower. when you start to daydream, the breath changes. Interesting. Chris, what did you notice? How did it change? Arthur also noticed that the breath was changing, especially when the mind was trying to impose a certain breath pattern. So the mind and body influencing each other. As I settle through the meditation, the breath becomes more subtle and quiet. At some point, the breath vanishes, almost shallow, non-existent, wondering how you're breathing. Yes, can happen also. We become so concentrated, the breath is becoming so subtle, so barely noticeable. Irregular breathing. Great. So the body and mind is influencing each other. So you notice the feeling of the breath changes as the mind changes. And maybe the mind also changes as the breath changes. So for example, if we start breathing very rapidly now, there's guaranteed to be some impact on the mind. When we start worrying, when we start tensing about things in the head, worrying, the breath also changes. As we get more concentrated, more subtle, the breath changes. So we are interested, because we are interested in the sensory experience of body and mind at the present moment. We are interested how this occurs, and we are interested in how they are working together, the body and mind. So we're giving importance to this, not by thinking about it, but by observing, by really observing the reality. So one thing that happens as we start to think about the world, or as we come into contact with the world, if you are having conversations, if you are going out and about, doing your chores, doing your work, it produces some sensations in the body. So it produces some feeling. Maybe there's contraction, maybe there's relaxation, maybe there's tightening, maybe you get a headache, maybe you start sweating, maybe you feel, maybe you know this expression of feeling a knot in the stomach, or feeling butterflies in the stomach, or feeling tension in the heart, or feeling a nice warm soft heart. So all these experiences that we go through in our life are constantly influencing and changing the way our body feels. I realized the light is leaving me. Changing the way our body feels. So essentially, this is our nervous system. Our nervous system is the way that we experience this world through our nervous system, which is constantly sending signals to the mind. Mind is constantly sending signals to the nervous system. We feel things. We feel stress. We feel relaxation. If you imagine back in the day, if we see a tiger, the whole nervous system instantly gets mobilized and starts to, pump the heart faster. Maybe there's some tension in the body. The muscles are pumped full of blood and kind of ready to fight or flight or flee. So this is the sensation, and we can feel this. If we start to really attend and pay attention to the sensations of our body, we can feel how the body is being influenced by our surroundings throughout the day, in every single moment. And the thing is that our nervous system can't really tell the difference between what is the real world and what is just a mind. So when we imagine a tiger, or when we imagine a situation that we're anxious about, or we start worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, the nervous system starts firing in the same way as we would be experiencing. Maybe to not as much of an extent, especially if you're distracting yourself, but the pattern, the energetical pattern in the nervous system that you feel will be very similar. So the nervous system can't really tell the difference between what is real and what is our imagination, our thinking. And so constantly there's sensations appearing inside the body. And a lot of these sensations are very subtle, very almost imperceivable. Sometimes they are very obvious, like the breath changing in its rhythm is more obvious, sweating, heat, strong contraction, butterflies. these things are more obvious, more strong, but actually there's to a very granular, fine level. Even thinking, you can feel thinking, maybe inside the head, maybe in the heart, the different thoughts you can feel inside the body if you develop the sensitivity. So, question. Do you ever get overwhelmed and lose clarity of what you are doing and why, and maybe act or react in ways that you later regret or realize like, wow, what was I doing there? And 1, never. 5, strongly agree. You can write in the chat. And Jack is asking what makes us laugh. Depends on you, Jack. But I'm not sure exactly what is the reason for laughing, evolutionary wise, but you can investigate for yourself how laughter appears as a mind-body phenomena. So usually we face some situation and then we laugh, and then we attribute our laughter to that situation. But you can recognize how laughter appears first in the mind, then maybe some feeling in the body, then maybe some feeling in the lips, and laughter appears. Maybe in the chest, maybe in the mind. So, okay, some people answered 4, 2s, and 3s. Jack never knows what he's doing. Great. So sometimes we lose our balance of our mind. So this can happen in varying degrees. This can happen a little bit sometimes, and you maybe act in some ways that you didn't want to, and sometimes this happens a lot, and we kind of have very strong moments of reaction. And so what the Vipassana is basically doing is exactly the opposite of that. So we cultivate intentionally the faculty of awareness, and we cultivate intentionally the faculty of equanimity. Those are the 2 main components of the Vipassana technique. Awareness means to develop your ability to concentrate, to focus, to collect and gather your mind onto whatever you choose. So before we were focusing on the breath, now we are focusing just body sensations. In Vipassana, we do this with our sensory experience of body and mind at the present moment. And also the level of clarity that you can bring to your experience. So the breath being one full thing, and maybe then you can notice the inhale and then the exhale, and then maybe you can notice the beginning of the inhale, the beginning of the exhale, and then so on and so forth. You develop more clarity, and you also start to see your thoughts more. So before, maybe there was one big thought that you saw after 1 minute, maybe now you start noticing the thoughts after 20 seconds, after 10 seconds, and you can start to catch more subtlety in that thinking, and you see how the thing is working. The second aspect is equanimity. So equanimity is to really just be aware of it, to allow and accept it as it is. So equanimity is not so much something that we have to do, it's more kind of something that we don't do. So rather than aware and then doing something, reacting to it or acting, we are really just aware, especially while meditating. The breath is like this, it's like this. The mind is like this, it's like this. So we're just allowing and accepting as it is. And maybe you notice equanimity coming and going. Sometimes you get more upset about the meditation. Sometimes you feel like pretty okay, and you're just doing the thing. So equanimity is the second component. And so how exactly are we doing this? So we are using the Vipassana technique of body scanning, where we are continuously passing our attention through our body systematically. So top to bottom, bottom to top in tonight's session. And as we do this, we're developing the skill of awareness, the clarity and the level of concentration that we can infuse our experience with, specifically the experience of our body and of our mind, because the mind is always appearing also in the body as some sensation in the body. So we can start to feel more subtle things. We can start to, usually we just start thinking about things that happen, but now we are really training ourselves somehow to really feel the sensory bodily experience of it. So if someone, for example, insults you, maybe we jump straight to the thoughts about that person and myself and how annoying this is. But now we train ourselves to first check the body, to first feel the body, to first feel the contraction, to first feel whatever is appearing in the body. And the second pillar is equanimity. So to train ourselves to be just aware, not to go after it, not to push it away, just to be aware of the experience. And this way we train this faculty of equanimity, where previously we start reacting with anxiety, with worry, with regret, with guilt, with doubt, and with disassociating. We train this faculty to just be aware of the thing and to allow it to come and to allow it to go. Just like all thoughts, they came and then they went again. You're not thinking the same thoughts as you were this morning in the meditation. You're not thinking the same thoughts as you were yesterday. The mind and body is changing. So in equanimity, we are just patient. We just wait for it to change in our meditations. Importantly, equanimity isn't a sort of disassociating or numbing ourselves to the experience, because we're also using awareness. So we are clearly aware of the experience, but we are not reacting to it. So it's different than kind of shutting ourselves off and detaching and not caring, almost like we're going into numbness or disassociating. No, we are clearly feeling the things and almost like riding the wave of their energy. Not fighting it, not grasping, not resisting, not pushing away, but just allowing it. Yes. Maybe I'll pause there and check in with everyone if there's any questions about awareness or equanimity. Yes, Jack.
Something came to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So something came to mind just as you were talking then. So there's a distinction between proactivity and reactivity. There's a difference between being proactive and being reactive.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to share it because it came up, and it's something that it's interesting to me, which is that in Kabbalah, what they say is every time that you don't react to something, you build light.
So you want build light?
You build internal light when you don't react to something. And when you react to something, you dissipate light.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a different way of putting it. But yeah, you can understand it in that way. What would you say, Jack, is the difference between proactivity and reactivity?
I think it's probably a question of intention. So that when there's a clear intention, whereas you're reactive, it's unconscious. You're just going with the pattern.
Sure. Yeah.
You're not bringing light to it.
Yeah, I like what you say. So light can be a kind of consciousness or intentionality.
Yeah,
and when we are just aware and equanimous of the thing and then act proactively rather than out of our kind of knee-jerk reaction, we have a choice because we can start to align more our actions with how we actually want to live our life, which is totally up
What's
to us.
interesting about the meditation is that you have the experience of thoughts coming up, but not reacting to them. And then you can take that experience into daily life. So that when you cross somebody, a thought comes up, but you don't react to it because you have the experience in meditation of not reacting to thoughts.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Great, thank you.
So it's like practice for real life. But I can be very, very reactive.
Yes.
Yeah. And that and as part of the intention for the course, it's really trying to find a way of negotiating that the aspects of reactivity in me.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Jack, for sharing that. Yeah, this is really the key of it.
Pleasure.
And the key is to we are not reacting by distracting ourselves, but we are reacting by clearly feeling the experience of it. So this is the difference between Vipassana meditation and Samatha meditation. Samatha meditation is when something unwanted happens and we feel ourselves in a state of reactivity. We calm the mind by focusing on something that we're used to focusing, like a mantra, visualization, maybe the breath. But in Vipassana meditation, we see the process of mind and body as a sensory experience and see how the reaction actually has some sensation, some sensory experience inside the body. And later we can also practice Vipassana with the mind. But it appears on the body. And by retraining that pattern of reacting to it, because that's what we do in our meditations, we're scanning our body and we're feeling everything there is, maybe neutral, maybe pleasant, maybe unpleasant, but we're not grasping after it. So we train ourselves to be clearly aware of everything and be equanimous. Yeah. So I just want to say the last point, which I had carried for today, which is really quite important related to this. So we need to not only understand this idea intellectually because you heard it from me or because someone told you about it, someone tells you, okay, don't react, be light, be wisdom, surrender. All these ideas are heard wisdom. So it's what we hear from people and okay, great, makes sense. And then we think about it like, okay, yeah, I need to not react. It makes so much sense. Okay, sensations in the body and body-mind influencing each other. Okay, I understand it. Great. But then actually when it comes to a situation, all of that goes out the window and we still have this knee-jerk reaction that we have. Because in the moments when we are triggered, when the nervous system is very fired up, we tend to completely lose awareness. We lose equanimity. So the key difference here is also that we want to make this into an experience and a practice that we are practicing on the cushion and also off the cushion. So this is where it becomes Vipassana, not by talking about it, not by thinking about it, but by really changing the way directly we experience it. And that's why we do body scanning, because we are training ourselves to feel the sensations. Sometimes it's boring, sometimes there's anger, sometimes there's anxiety, sometimes it's neutral, sometimes there's pleasure, sometimes it's joy, sometimes it's love, sometimes it's whatever it is. We are just aware. and we allow it to be. We surrender to the experience, whatever it is. We could also say we love the experience. Unconditional love is another, I think, is another word for equanimity. You have unconditional love. There's no conditions to which part of experience you love and which parts you don't love. And that is where Vipassana starts going deeper, starts really rewiring the way we experience our reality. So it's important to make this into something we practice rather than just think or talk about theoretically. Okay. So let us do quickly a run through of what of today, just to kind of allow the bigger picture to become clearer, and then there's open space for any further questions. So I just invite you to close down the eyes to reduce the sensory input, which makes it easy to be with the body. So today we went through talked about Vipassana being a kind of way of seeing clearly, of seeing in, special way of looking. And we are looking at, rather than thinking about the world and our place in the world, we are just paying attention to our sensory experience of body and mind at the present moment. This is what we are looking at. We're looking inside rather than outside. And when we start looking in this way, we start seeing that the body and mind is influencing each other, is working on its own. It's the nature of body and mind. It won't stop. And we accept whatever is happening. So the nervous system, our body, reacts to the world constantly, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, sometimes neutral. And it's the same with our thoughts. They create these reactions inside the nervous system, inside the body, which we can train ourselves to start to feel, to become more sensitive to. So when something happens in the world, something annoys us, triggers us, we just react to that outside thing. The same with our thinking, our mind. When thinking comes and we start thinking about something we don't like or something we really, really like, the nervous system is reacting. The dopamine is running, the discomfort is coming, and we can feel that as an experience. So we bring this experience to the forefront of our experience. And we train ourselves to be aware of this in clarity, in concentration, and with equanimity, with just the awareness, to allow it, to accept it as it is. Not because we want to become zombies who don't feel anything, because feeling is part of nature. I've been doing this practice for 6-7 years, and I still feel many, many things, if not more than before. Feeling is part of nature. Feelings won't disappear, but we are learning how to have access to just being aware and just being equanimous, so that we have the choice and we have the space to act proactively, as Jack said beautifully. This is why we do body scanning. We want to cultivate sensitivity towards all parts of our body, which is why we go through systematically. And we want to keep cultivating this sense of just the awareness without wanting anything, without looking elsewhere, just aware. And we make this into experiential wisdom that we're experiencing and knowing intuitively, deeply. It's a bit like riding a bike. We can only really ride a bike when we learn and get on the bike. We can't just keep talking about how the bike works and how to steer in theory and how to pedal. No, we need to really practice and get on the bike, which is why we have this dedicated space and time, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening during this course, to practice this way of relating to our sensory experience of body and mind at the present moment. Okay, this was the summary, and yeah, open floor for any questions. If you want to talk out loud, then maybe just raise the hand as Jack did. Yeah. Faith.
Hi, Raymer. I have a question regarding how, let me think about this. How do you know? Well, I kind of know the answer, right? It's not fully realized, but like, how do you know the difference between samatha and vipassana? Because even if I start to, let's say, focus on one thing, which is, let's say, samatha, and let's say that's the breath, the experience is always wider than the breath, because for me, I'm not just aware of the breath. I'm always aware of what sensations are occurring in the body and other kind of subtleties that are happening. So for me, I feel like it's Vipassana a lot of the time. So how do you put that in its own kind of lane? Which one's which? Or is it both? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
I don't really know, but it feels like Vipassana, even if I start with samatha, let's say.
So this is a great question, and something I've asked myself a lot also, especially while at the monastery. The thing is that in the beginning, the two are not so distinct. So if we're just practicing without creating anything extra, like if we're practicing mindfulness of breathing without using visualization or mantra or some kind of controlling of the experience, then actually samatha and vipassana are the same thing for a while. But where it really starts to make a difference is as we go deeper, because as you get better at concentrating, you're able to focus on the breath and nothing else appears. So this is this is more on retreat, but then the things really start settling down and then nothing else is appearing. And maybe you notice a few thoughts, but your habit is not to recognize the thinking. Your habit is just to come back, just to come back, just to come back, just to come back. And so it starts making more of a difference as you settle down. So instead of doing that, we allow the experience to unfold as it happens naturally. So actually, if we go very, very into the far end of Vipassana, we don't at all choose our attention. Like we just let our attention be open awareness, and whatever body mind is appearing at the present moment, we are clearly aware of that. But we can't really do that in the beginning, because most of the time you would just start thinking about things without realizing it. So that's why we use some focus object like the breath to develop some concentration of body and mind at the present moment, or why we do body scanning, which is also using actually quite a lot of concentration, because we're kind of choosing our experience moment to moment and selecting just the sensations of the body. But actually, even in the Goenka retreats, what they start doing in the longer retreats, they don't move their attention anymore. They just bring their attention on the top of their head, and because they've trained this body awareness so much, the body mind just manifests on the body moment to moment, and they just aware what is happening moment to moment. And that's where it's Vipassana, where we are just without choosing, just aware and not reacting to body and mind at the moment.
Great answer. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no worries. So as long as we are, so for example, if I told you like, okay, focus on your breathing and use a mantra and visualize things, it becomes actually much easier to focus on the breathing, because we're aiding it. We're kind of unifying the mind around that. But then quickly we stop learning, because okay, then we start going into nice flow states while we're meditating. We start becoming very focused, very peaceful in our meditations. But then nothing else arises anymore, and we stop learning. And then we feel peace and feel great when we do the meditation, but then in daily life, we still react in the same way, because we haven't retrained the way we fundamentally relate to all mind and body. We've just picked one part and keep focusing on that. Okay.
That's right, because it's through your own personal experience, you get the understanding. Through the understanding, that's the liberating factor from your conditioned patterns and responses, right?
Yes. Yes.
I
something
think.
like that. That's how you can verbalize it in many ways. Yeah. There's just some other people who are raising their hand. Arthur.
Hey, how are you? I have a question. So, why did you choose to then do the Vipassana part by focusing on specific parts of the body versus the Goenka mode, where they just like focus on the head? I'm asking because I'm going to do that long retreat, so I'm just wondering. Yeah.
What is the long retreat? 10-day retreat, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what I mean by long retreat is the 30-day retreats they have. In the 10-day
okay.
retreat, they do body scanning like I'm teaching in this course, but in the deeper, in the 30, 45-day retreats, which I haven't done personally, but I've talked to a few people who have, they work more with the choiceless awareness of body and mind.
And what's the difference? It's just like another stage, like another level that we reach when we can just.
Yeah,
like,
you could call it that. Yeah.
Mm.
Because now, if you try to do that, you will be distracted, for sure. Me also.
Mm. And is there a difference? So, for instance, what's the other part? So there's Vipassana and there's Asana. No,
Samatha.
like the one where Samatha, where we focus on the breath, right?
Yes.
Is there any difference between that and using a mantra? Because the experiences I have from that one are pretty similar to the ones when I had a mantra, for instance.
Yeah, mantra is pure samatha technique. In the mindfulness of breathing, when we're doing it like we did in the first 4 days, we are practicing samatha, but kind of in preparation for vipassana. So we stay away from mantra, from visualization, because we're preparing ourselves to feel the sensations of the breath and then the sensations of the body. Whereas if we use mantra, we won't focus and we won't tune to the sensations. And that's why it stays samatha.
Okay. And sorry, just one more last question. Do you have any like books that you recommend, like Buddhist books that you recommend?
Yes, absolutely. I have a reading list which I will send out. I can share it already,
Okay.
but I send it out in the last email. I think
okay.
it's here. I shared the link in the chat.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Elena or Elena.
Yeah, I have one question on this equanimity concept. Does Vipassana help us deal with, for example, emotions that we think come from patterns, say, for example, guilt or grief, or even anger, or numbness? That is it just acceptance of those feelings, or does Vipassana help us actually deal with those, digest those, and perhaps like actually we don't want to feel numb in a specific situations? It's actually our pattern. So Vipassana helps us not feel numb when that pattern happens.
Yeah, nice question. This numbness is something I've been investigating in myself in the last year, because it started happening to me. I started kind of feeling numb, and then I started questioning, like, what is this thing I've been training, the equanimity thing that I've been training? Is it just training numbness? But I recognize that I wasn't doing it properly. So Vipassana helps us to be aware, and as we start to cultivate more this awareness, we start to see more clearly how these different emotions arise within our mind and body as we go through the day. So we can start to catch more the beginning of things. Usually we just, I've already numbed out and I'm feeling completely angry, or I'm feeling completely anxious or something, like after almost it already happened. It's almost like a black hole that appeared, and then we lost the awareness of what's happening, and then we find ourselves in this state and we don't know how we got here. But what we can start to do is we pay more attention really to how it happens. We start to recognize what really happens in that first moment when the emotion arises, because it always starts with something little and then kind of bounces mind and body and becomes more intense. And there our patterns and things really start to play a huge role in how that trajectory goes. So we need to inquire, basically. We need to check ourselves and develop this awareness. So when you're meditating, you try to notice how the things start, because probably you'll find yourself deep in something, but you don't really notice how it started. So try to notice earlier how it starts, maybe as a feeling in the body, maybe as recognizing the thinking, and with numbness, it also tends to be this kind of freeze response of the nervous system. So I found that in my day-to-day life, we're not always trying to just be completely neutral and not speak up and just allow everything, because actually sometimes this can just be the freeze response in effect, the numbing out. But actually we can also practice Vipassana with action. So with strong action, with strong speaking, with, speaking up for what's unfair, for expressing. So this is not different from Vipassana, to express and to act, actually. We can do both, but we do it with awareness and equanimity, actually. So yeah, this would be the answer that I have found in my
helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, very helpful. Thanks a lot.
But maybe there's something I don't see yet. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Arthur. Okay. Yeah, thanks everyone for the great discussion, great sharings, great questions, and most of all for your attention, the gift of your attention. Thank you. And
Thank you very much.
yes.
Thanks,
Good.
Raymer.
Thank you, Faye. Thank you, Lena.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you on Saturday for the next lecture, or Q&A before that.
See you. Bye.
Take care.